Hello, wonderful people of the internet. Welcome back to the CBT Consultancy channel. My name is Chaka, and this is the last video in the KSA series, the series in which I've been talking about how to assemble your knowledge, skills, and attitudes portfolio, or the KSA portfolio that is required for a lot of people that would be applying for accreditation as a cognitive behavioral psychotherapist with the British Association of Behaviour and Cognitive Psychotherapists, BABCP. And in this video, I will be talking through how to complete the last 4 criteria. And 3 of these Criterion 11, Criterion 12, and Criterion 13 are attitudes criteria, and the final criteria, Criterion 14, is a biography. So let's get into it after the intro. Welcome to the CBT Consultancy channel, the channel where Chaka Yumba, a CBT therapist, is joined by colleagues and leading experts in the field in discussing the vast intricacies of cognitive behavioral therapy and other evidence-based psychological therapies. For more information, please visit cbtconsultancy.com. And now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So the first thing to remember is the templates. So again, I have done a video in which I've talked through each of the templates and the particular criteria that you need to use this particular template for. So I'm not going to go into that in a lot of detail, but just as a recap, for Criterion 11, 12, and 13, the attitudes criteria, you need a reference for each of these criteria. So if you're doing any of these criteria, so if you're doing like a condensed KSA and you need to do Criterion 13, for example, or you're doing a full KSA and you need to do all of them, please remember that for each of these 3 criteria, you need a full reference. And by that, it's not just somebody signing their name. They actually have to write out a reference attesting and demonstrating the fact that you actually meet this criteria. So you're going to be using, the likelihood is you're going to be using 2 templates for each of these 3 criteria in the attitude section. So the first template that you would be using is the KSA2 template, which is the self-statement. So first of all, you need to write out a self-statement demonstrating how you fulfill that criterion. That's the first template. The second template that you would need here is the KSA4 template, which is the reference template. So on this template, as you can see, you would obviously write your name, you would write the category, and the category is the attitude section, the number, so if it's Criterion 13, and also the name of the particular criterion. Now, on this reference template, you then have a section where you write the name of the referee, you write the position, so maybe they're a senior CBT therapist or a senior psychological wellbeing practitioner or a lead counselor. You write their email address, you write their phone number and their relationship to you. So maybe they were your line manager or still are. Maybe they were your clinical supervisor or whatever other relationship. Maybe they're a colleague, a mentor, and so on. And then you have this section here. So the person that is writing the reference, they are asked to refer to the guidelines for referees providing KSA references, and this is also in the guidelines document. As an applicant, what you would be doing, or what I did in my case, is I filled out this top part. So I wrote out my name, the category, the criterion number, and what I knew about the referee. So I'd write their name, their position, if I knew their email address and telephone number, just to make their lives as easy as possible. So I'd probably fill this out in advance and just check if they're happy with what I've written, and then I would send them these guidelines for referees providing the document so that they are aware of what should be written. And then it says references should be typed in Word, not handwritten, printed and signed and provided to the applicant. So basically they need to type their reference in here, how you meet that criteria, and then if they can paste their signature here, then it's going to make your life a lot easier, because if they type their name in there, then there could be a requirement for them to then also send an additional email either to the BABCP or to the university, confirming that they have actually provided that reference using the email address that's provided above. So yeah, it's very important to be aware of the templates that you're using. So you'd be using the self-statement template KSA4, KSA2, and the reference template KSA4 for these criteria. So again, as always, you go to the reference document, which is the guidelines for assembling and assessing KSA portfolios. And that will give us all the information we need with regards to what's needed for each of these 4 final criteria. KSA Criterion 11 is fitness to practice and suitable at a personal level. So I'm just going to elaborate on that a little bit. So in this criterion, what you and your referee would need to be demonstrating is you are suitable to work in a caring profession. And that suitability involves things like you are not a danger to the public, so you don't have any kind of criminal records. You're not a danger to working with children. You're not a danger to working with vulnerable adults. You're not a danger just in general to working with people that are vulnerable. So that's part of your suitability. And also you have the skills. So you have the necessary clinical skills such that you can make clinical judgments about certain situations. So those are the things that would be looked out for in this criterion. Quite interestingly, in each of these attitudes criteria, they don't necessarily say what you need to demonstrate as the applicant, but you can use the information they're requesting from your reference to guide you in terms of the things that you're going to be writing about. So this is what they've asked from the reference. They've said reference attesting to what evidence the referee has of the applicant's fitness to practice and suitability to be working in a helping role, including, for example, CRB checks. So CRB checks are criminal and background checks. So that would be demonstrated through something like your DBS certificate, your disclosure and barring service certificate. No criminal convictions or professional judgments against them that would exclude them from working in a professional capacity. A statement that the applicant candidate has a reasonable understanding within the professional community. A reasonable standing within the professional community, with this clearly evidenced by giving illustrative examples that the applicant candidate is able to appropriately form, maintain, and end helping relationships in a way which holds to appropriate professional boundaries. And then it says, additionally, the self-statement from the applicant must confirm that they are able to practice as an autonomous professional, exercising their own professional judgment, are able to assess a situation, determine the nature and severity of the problem, and call upon the required knowledge and experience to deal with the problem, are able to initiate resolution of problems, and is able to exercise personal initiative, know the limits of their practice and when to seek advice or refer to another professional, recognize that they're personally responsible for and must be able to justify their decisions. It is strongly recommended that in demonstrating the above, the applicant candidate draws directly on the reflective diary and or other records of practice, utilizing these to construct a reflective statement that concludes with a description of their contemporary practice and how they have maintained fitness to practice as an appropriate person. So, this is all about just demonstrating that you are a sensible, reasonable, grown-up human being who can work in a caring profession. There is nothing too spectacular, I would say, about this particular one. So just demonstrating the fact that you don't have any there are no question marks about your ability to work in a helping role. You're somebody that's respected in that community. People would say, how have they allowed somebody with such a record to be in a helping role? And also that you know what you're doing in the role. So if you are a you could be a mental health nurse. Do you know what you're doing in your role? Do you know what to do when a question exceeds your pay grade and how to resolve that? You could be a psychological wellbeing practitioner, you could be a counselor, whatever role you're working with, you could be a mental health support worker, whatever role you're working with, are you able to fulfill that role to the best of your ability? And if there are difficulties that arise either with colleagues or with the individuals that you're working with, are you able to resolve those things in a professional way? Do you know when to consult with other people? Do you know when to consult with your supervisor, your line manager, or other people? And are you able to use the resources that are available to you for you to practice in that role? That's basically how you'd be demonstrating in this role. And obviously, you'd then be giving illustrative examples. You'd be giving, if I was writing this, I would be giving an example of when I've managed a situation on my own. I would also be giving an example of when I have had to ask for support in managing a situation which was maybe to do with a client or a patient in that helping role. And your referee, they would be writing something similar. So they would be saying that yes, you are a respected person in that field. You are known to have those skills, those qualifications. You have not had any disciplinary issues. There are no convictions against you. Something along those lines that's not too detailed, they would be writing out on your behalf. And that's about it. That's criterion number 11. Criterion 12 is the capacity to reflect on and evaluate on values, priorities, and so on. Now, this might be a tricky one depending on what field you're coming from. But I think if you're coming from any field that is related to mental health, there is always reflection. And even if it's not mental health, maybe it's a related field. Maybe you're coming from a nursing background. Maybe you're coming from a teaching background. I think in nursing, as far as I know, there is definitely quite a lot of reflection. In teaching, I'm not entirely sure how much reflection, like self-reflection, teachers do, but I'm sure there is some level of reflection. But it's just that ability to take a back seat and to look at what you're doing, how it is impacting other people, how it is impacting you, and whether there's things that you can do to develop your practice further. So there is always room for improvement, and we can always get better in whatever field we are in. So whether we're a CBT therapist, whether we're a clinical psychologist, whether we're a lecturer, whether we're a nurse, we're a doctor, whatever field we're in, we can always get better. And the question is, do you take the time? Do you take a step back and from time to time and evaluate what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what you could do better, what is good about what you're currently doing, what you need to continue doing, and so on. That is what they're asking for in this in this particular criterion. And if you have come from any kind of a psychological therapy background, say for example a PWP or a counselor, you probably would have you definitely would have, in your training, you would have had opportunities to reflect on your practice. And even in your actual clinical practice, you'd have things like supervision where you're reflecting on your practice. So you can just demonstrate that when writing up this particular criterion. So they have said here that the reference would be attesting to the evidence that the referee has the applicant that the referee has that the applicant or candidate exercises self-reflective capacity within their work, giving consideration to their awareness of their own values and internal processes, significance of prejudices, impact on others, personal skills and values, and their limiting impact where appropriate, evidenced by giving at least 2 illustrative examples of the applicant candidate acting in a self-reflective way or with self-awareness in their work. We need to remember the 2 illustrative examples. So when you write out your personal statement, you can write 2 examples of when you have shown that ability to reflect on your work. You could talk about things that you've taken to supervision and reflected on your own. You could even talk about things like you've reflected on personally. Maybe you've had some unconscious prejudice against somebody because of a certain characteristic this person has. Has reflection helped you maybe overcome or reduce that prejudice? So it could be through like one-to-one supervision, group supervision, a reflective diary. You just illustrating those examples that way, and your referee, they would have to write 2 illustrative examples. In addition to demonstrating how you're a reflective person, they would have to write 2 illustrative examples as well that show that you are able to reflect on your values and on your priorities. So preferably this would be somebody that knows you reasonably well. So this could be ideally, if you are in some kind of a psychological therapy role, ideally a clinical supervisor would be a good person to write out this criterion for you, or this reference for you. But it could even be somebody like a lecturer, or another person that just has that professional ability to comment on your ability to reflect on your values. The final criterion is criterion 13, which has inquiring mind and is receptive to scientist practitioner approach. So this criterion is just asking, are you open-minded? Are you able to gain new information, accept that new information, even if it challenges things that you already know, even if it challenges your personal preferences and biases? Are you open to receive this information? But are you also able to seek out this information? Are you always willing to gain new information, gain new knowledge, and take the steps that are needed to gain that knowledge? And then when it talks about the scientist practitioner approach, do you take a scientific approach to your work? So are you, again, go back to what I've mentioned in criterion number 9, are you willing to look at the evidence-based, look at what the literature says on things, and then implement that? So are you working on a principle of I'm basing my actions on what the research says? And also, are you able to critically evaluate information? And also, are you able to then take that information, bring it into your service, bring it into your actual practice with your clients, bring it into the service, help the service grow and develop? As you help your clients also grow and develop, those are the things that are being asked for with regards to criterion 13. So let's have a read at what they're asking from the reference. So it says, a reference attesting to the evidence the referee has that within the applicant candidate's practice, they demonstrate curiosity and the spirit of inquiry in collaborative working, which has emphasis on evidence-based approach to both identifying problems and finding and applying solutions to them, not only in terms of drawing from evidence bases commonly used within mental health, but their ongoing involvement in and contribution to the development of the evidence base with other practitioners and other professionals, evidenced by at least 2 illustrative examples. So when you write your personal statement, you would be giving your 2 illustrative examples of how you have you show an inquiring mind and the scientist practitioner approach, and also your referee will be writing 2 examples. So the way I would be tackling it is I would take one example where I show that I have an inquiring mind. So this could be I came across a situation with a client that I'd never come across before. So what did I do? I'd never dealt with intrusive thoughts or OCD. This client was having thoughts about maybe stabbing themselves and so on, and these were intrusive thoughts. They were not actually planning to do them. I'd never seen this before. I then went and had a look at what the evidence base says about this type of OCD. That is demonstrating curiosity. Then the scientist practitioner approach is again, and I have learned this thing from the evidence base. How do I apply it in my personal practice? So you could give an example of you actually using what you've learned from the evidence base to help a client, or you could say, this is something that I brought to my service, or this is something that I brought to my university to supervision, and and you are contributing that way to the growth of the evidence base. This is something unusual. I've never seen it in the literature. I bring it to my university, to my supervision, and maybe somebody's going to take that idea and do more research on it and build on it. So you don't necessarily have to have written. If you've written an article in a scientific journal, then that is good evidence. You can demonstrate that. But even if you can just bring something to the attention of people who would then be able to maybe do research on that, build on that, then you're contributing to the evidence base. So I think that's all there is to Criterion 13. So you're just demonstrating, yes, I can take in new knowledge. I take the initiative to get new knowledge, and if something if new knowledge comes my way, I'm receptive to it. I'm not just content on just doing things the way I've always done them. And also I can apply that knowledge, not just have it as head knowledge, but I can apply it to my clinical practice, to the development of the service I work in, to support my colleagues, people that I'm at university with, and so on. Let's just have a look at the final criteria. So it doesn't say anything. The final criteria is the biography or clinical experience record. And I'm just going to explain what they want you to do in Criterion 14 is they want you to tie all the other 13 criteria together. So they basically want you to give a summary of how you have met each of the 13 criteria that you've been writing about. And they even give a limit. They say, so I'm going to bring up the document that you would be using for this one. So this is the document you'd be using. You'd be using the KSA 6 document, and it's aptly entitled Biography. And with this one, it says, see biography sample document. So there is actually an example on the BABCP website, or in this guidelines document, which we're going to go to in a second. So it should be typed, not handwritten, and it should be only approximately 500-700 words. So you're not writing loads and loads. You're just tying everything together. So when I did my bachelor's degree, I learned my bachelor's of science in psychology. I learned about the life stages and human development. When I did my PWP training in this year, I learned about awareness of risk. You're basically writing brief sentences, just demonstrating how you've acquired each of these knowledge, skills, and attitudes criteria. That's all it is. So you're just summarizing the previous 13 criteria. So it might be helpful for us to maybe just look for that illustrative example. So you've got this example here of the biography. So there they talk about their undergraduate degree in 1990, and then they're specifically talking about the criteria it's related to. So this is related to Criterion 2, 6, 8, and 10. Then they go on to talk about their work experience. So they talk about their work experience and how that helped them to gain the skills for Criterion 5, 6, and 7. They talk about working as a nursing assistant and how this contributed to Criterion 10, 11, 12, and 13. And then the other roles, they contributed to this criteria. So yeah, they've written a page and a half. I wrote a lot less. My biography, and it was marked by the university, and then it was looked at by the BABCP as well, and they didn't come back and say you need to write more. It was about half a page, because I would just write what the training was, what criteria it helped me meet when I did the training, and so on. So I think that's the easiest one, and I would probably do that last. If I was doing my KSA, I would do the other 13 first, and then once I'd done all the 13, then I would just be looking at what I've written in those 13 and then summarizing it really, really briefly in Criterion 14. And remember, it's only 500-700 words, and you're not going to get any extra marks by just writing loads and loads and loads. So this brings me to the end of my coverage of the knowledge, skills, and attitudes portfolio, commonly known as the KSA portfolio. I have done several videos on this. So I did a video in which I talked about whether you actually need to do the KSA portfolio, because there are people who are exempt from doing the KSA portfolio, and in that first video I go through what the BABCP says, and I show you how to find the information. This information is dynamic in the sense that they update that regularly. So when you start writing your portfolio, you need to go onto the website and see the accurate information. So you wouldn't go necessarily by what I've covered in that video, because that was current at the time I recorded the video. In the second video, I talked about who would be marking your KSA portfolio. So there are two options. Either your KSA portfolio will be marked by the university if it's a level 2 or level 1 accredited course. If it's not an accredited course that you do, then your KSA would be marked directly by the BABCP, and that has an impact on how much pressure you have, put it that way, in doing the KSA. But I talk about that in the video. I also talk about all the templates that you would need to use and for which criteria you'd need to use a particular template. So that was the second video. In the third video, I then talked about the first 4 criteria, which are the knowledge criteria, and how to write about those criteria. In the fourth video, I went through the skills criteria, so criteria 5 to 10, and how to write about those, what sort of information they would be looking for. And this is the final video in which I've gone through the attitudes criteria, criteria 11 to 13, and the biography. So I hope you can view this as kind of a reference, and maybe it's a helpful starting point for somebody who doesn't know necessarily where to start from assembling their KSA portfolio. And you can always comment in the comment section if you have any additional questions. There are ways you can contact me directly if you have additional questions related to this. So yeah, definitely I hope this is helpful. But one message that I try to keep emphasizing in these videos is, remember that the KSA is a pass-fail. You are not gonna get extra marks just by overdoing it. So I would say to people who are doing their KSA, please don't feel under too much pressure. Don't overdo it. Remember that if you've already been accepted, or you think you are likely to be accepted onto a CBT training course, that means that you already meet the KSA requirements. You don't write reams and reams. I think you're not helping yourself in any way, and you're not helping the market. You can definitely do it. I did it. Lots of other people have done it, and you can definitely do it. And I hope that these videos are helpful to that end. So please remember that a healthy mind is a wealthy mind, and I will see you on another video. You've been watching the CBT Consultancy channel. For more information, please visit cbtconsultancy.com. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more such content. Until next time, from me, Chaka Yumba, and my panel, it's goodbye.